So, I mean, in comparison to, say, about 3000 BC, what the biblical constraint you mentioned about, here we have archaeological evidence which dates back at least to 4 lakh years,
Yes,
400,000 years.
yes. So now, coming back to our own heritage, our own text, and before even going into the text, I know from childhood when I take a bath or I take a dip in a river or pond, I used to sing this beautiful prayer: Gange cha Jamune chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmede Sindhu Kaveri cha Jalesmin Sannidhim Kuru. That means that, O river Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu, and Kaveri, please enrich the water I am bathing with your presence. So many of these rivers are North Indian. As you can see, there is Kaveri, and Narmada goes to the west. So we don't know who actually composed this particular prayer. There's no evidence, there's no reference. Yet we do that for we do not know how many millennia. So that shows there is a specific unity among the people of Bharat. You may want to call cultural unities, Adhyatic unity, but that was the case with our civilization. Now, before I get into the other scriptures, um, any scripture, for example, the age of Vedas, we do not know. People say 5,000, 8,000, 10,000, 20,000. Really speaking, it is very difficult to estimate. They call the Harappan civilization, Mohenjo civilization, Indus Valley civilization, where Saraswati River was there. It is very difficult to actually tell when the Vedas were composed. But we know from modern interpretation when the Puranas were composed. More or less, there's some rough estimates. Puranas are basically, we call them itihasa, or recorded events that has happened in the past. It doesn't have a date in it most of the time, and that makes it harder. Same with Ramayana Mahabharata. It doesn't say much date the way we know the calendars we have in modern era, but they did have a way. Mahabharata's Ramayana had specific way to tell the time period. So I'll come to that later. But more or less, we know that the Puranas are not that old. Some say the Vishnu Puran is the oldest one, and Vishnu Puran perhaps is. Some people say it's you know 1000 BCE, or even some people say 500 BCE. But then there is another very important two other. Because I'll be quoting from that, the Bhagavata Puran, and then the Padma Puran. So the age, there are some aging issues, a lot of debates, but we know these Puranas were written well before the invasions from the West happened. Many people think that the Puranas are actually encyclopedic in nature. So today, if I write about, say, today's events and I record it, and next week I will again record it what happened that day. So it's kind of a living document. So Puranas do tell us a lot about what what happened in the past. But then, before getting into Puranas, I want to mention that the name Bharat, first we find in our ancient text, among the ancient texts, is Rig Veda, which is the oldest Veda. And in Rig Veda, you find several mentions of this so-called Bharata clan dynasty, Bans. And one mantra says, Ya ime rodasi uve, aham indram astu stabham, vishwamitrasya yarashakti brahmedam bharatam janam. It means, praises to Indra, have I sung, sustainer of this earth and heaven. This prayer for Vishwamitra keeps secure the race of Bharatas. That means there was a dynasty, there's a so-called race of Bharata, and that that is the first reference to this name Bharat, which denotes a dynasty, a clan at that time. Another mantra in book 3, it says, I'm not reading the mantra, it says, these men, the sons of Bharata, O Indra, regard not severance or close connection. They urge their own steed, as it were, another's, and take him swift as the bowstring to battle. So again, this Bharata, the sons of Bharata, that means either King Bharata or the child from the Bharata clan. So that is the first reference of the word, the name Bharat uh, found. Now, what does it have to do with the name of the country, right? Bharat. So then
So that
again,
is the name of a clan. I mean, what we
that's
get
name
from
of
the
the
language
clan.
is name of a clan, a
Exactly.
family, but
Right.
not the land. So when
Right.
does the land name Bharat come in?
Exactly. So we'll come to that slowly. We'll get into that. Um, so according to Bhagavad Purana, most people know that Bhagavan Vishnu has 10 avatars. But actually, if you look at Bhagavad Purana, there are 24 avatars mentioned, avatars of Vishnu.
Really?
Yes. And the eighth avatar, his name is Rishabha. And the last one is Kalki, but we know about the last 10, like which is Matsya Karma, Varaha, Narsimha, Vaman, Parashuram, Ram, Krishna, Buddha, and Kalki. But that was towards the end of 24, lineage of 24 avatars. But eighth avatar was Rishabha Deva. And so this, keep in mind, this Rishabha has some very important relations with the name of Bharata. Eighth avatar, King Rishabha, is son of King Navi. His father's name was Navi. So Bharat, the country used to be called uh, Navi Varsha at some point. Bharata was the king, the Chakravartin, who ruled the whole region, whether it's world or country or region. So the king who was very famous at that time, his name was Bharata. And in Rig Veda, there are mentions of fights between different clans, and Bharata king's name was also mentioned. And King Bharata was the son of this Rishabhadev, Rishabhanath. In Jain tradition, they mention that there are 24 Tirthankaras, and Rishabhadeva was the first. So now look at the connections, and most experts today say the same Rishabhadev, who was the eighth avatar according to Vishnu Bhagavad Puran, was also the first Tirthankar of the Jains. His son was Raja Bharat. And he was so famous, so benevolent, and so much he had done for the nation. The nation was from now on, was called Bharat or Bharat Barsha. So that is the origin of the name. So
So what you just described comes from Bhagavad Puran. Has it been possible to date the Bhagavad Puran?
Bhagavad Puran is dated between 800 and 1000 BCE. So that is the time frame most people agree that that's the age of Bhagavad Puran. And then, Bhagavad Puran says that it was composed in the onset of Kali Yuga. This Puran says. And Kali Yuga, according to our tradition, started around 3100 before Christ. And we have, I don't want to get into details, we have estimated the timing of Mahabharat war, the lifetime of Sri Krishna. We have many evidences now from Dwarka and other places that the Mahabharata was historical. And in Mahabharata, we find that the Kali Yuga is actually happening starts actually during the time of King Parikshit. And Parikshit was the grandson of Arjun, son of Abhimanyu. So there it's called. So if the age of Mahabharata is 3300 BCE, then we can tell that the Bhagavad Puran must be probably older than that. So we don't know. There's no archaeological evidence, only literary evidence, comparative literature. That's how the linguists figure it out. So yes, so in Bhagavad Puran, this is mentioned. But I'll come to other Puranas that are probably later day Puranas. But before that, I just wanted to mention one thing. There are 31 languages in Bharat, which is spoken by over 1 million people, over 10 lakh people. We have officially recorded close to 2,000 dialects. And every 10 kilometers you travel in India, you'll find a new type of culture, food, literature, dress. It cannot happen if the nation was not so old. The language, where it's Gujarat in the west or in Bengal in the east, there are so much similarities because of the mother language or grandmother language being Sanskrit. And in south also we have languages that are not directly linked to Sanskrit but very much influenced by Sanskrit. So it takes thousands of years to evolve into new languages. So linguists will tell you. Now if you look at the Hindu calendars, almost throughout the country, you will find that the calendars, the months are very similar, if not exactly same. And that unity, that oneness was there in India. And if you look at Ramayana, and it describes when Sri Ramchandra was going for Banavas, and he traveled through different parts of Bharat, and he there is a description of locations, flora and fauna, and they still do exist. The names of these janapads or countries or cities, most of them still do exist. Most of the plants, trees, flowers, rivers mentioned, they are still there. And Ramayana again is older than Mahabharata, so we do not have exact dating. Some people say 15,000 years ago, 10,000, 17,000. So there are a lot of debates, so I don't want to get into that. But we know for sure today that Mahabharata war happened during 3066 BCE. A lot of research is done based on the descriptions of different constellations mentioned in Mahabharata, and those are much more permanent calendars and clocks compared to the modern day calendars and clocks. And there's so many, but it Mahabharata mentions when certain event like Vishma died. That day, what was the constellation in the sky? It describes, and if you backtrack and the scientific calculation done, that you find the date. In Dwarka, you find a lot of evidence of a city that is supposed to be Bhagavan Krishna's. Um, um, as you know, your capital, Delhi, was Indraprasth, and the head of chief of Archaeological Survey of India has published a book. Actually, I was lucky to get a copy from him himself, Professor B. B. Lal. He wrote a book, and I have read that. I have it. Indraprastha, the earliest Delhi going back to Mahabharata times. So we do know that Mahabharata is quite old, and Ramayana was older than that. So in Mahabharat Bhishma Parva, now coming back to the name Bharat, in Mahabharat, which is older than about 7,000 years old when it was
Mhm.
composed, it says there are several verses in Bhishma Parva, book 6, chapter 10. I'm not reading the actual sloka. Um, it means that um, it talks about the 50 rivers in Mahabharata, that I will now owe Bharata's race of the tract land known by Bharat's name. This is what Mahabharata says. This land is the beloved one of Indra, and you of Bharata's race, this land, O monarch, that is called after Bharata, is also the beloved land of Manu, the son of Vishwavat, Vaivasat, and Prithu, Vanya, and so forth. So this set of four shlokas in Mahabharata very clearly states that you belong to the race of Bharata. By the way, the Ikshaku clan, which is also the clan of Bharatas, also became Surya Vangsha, which is Sri Ram was the last 80th king of the Surya Vangsha, which is the Ikshaku Vangsha, which is connected to Bharata Vangsha. So this Bharata clan or race or whatever you want to call, now Mahabharata very clearly states that this land is called after Bharata. This land is Bharat.
You said something very interesting, which is one of the shlokas talks about 50 rivers. Now, some people have argued, or they are still arguing, that even if Bharat name was used in the ancient times, that probably indicated only the northern part of the country and did not include the southern part. So, is there any indication in these slokas that, geographically talking, we are talking about Bharat, the entire peninsula?
Yes, definitely. So that debate goes on. So in Mahabharata, I have counted that there is mention of almost 50 rivers, starting, of course, the Hapta Sindhu, that is Saraswati, Sindhu, and other rivers, that is north and northwest. But it goes all the way down to Kaveri, Godavari, and many, many other rivers. So there is no question that Mahabharata, the great Bharata, Mahabharata, the great Bharata, the grand Bharata was comprised, had this mentioned this, all these rivers must have been part of this civilization, not north and south. Of course, the Aryan invasion theory is discarded now. Those who propagated, like Ramila Thapar, they are changing into migration, but there is no migration, no solid evidence of any such thing as even migration. Yes, migration happens all the time, back and forth. People go out and come, but there's no mass migration. What happened is the colonies created this class between North, the Aryans versus Dravidians, and all this. That debate is still going on, although there is no solid proof of that Aryans came from outside and drove the people from north down south who are supposed to be Dravidian. So that's where the problem happened. So till today, politicians, some of the Christian missionaries and other vested interest people do propagate this idea. Oh, Bharat was only north. Bharat was only part of north, not south. So Mahabharat very clearly gives evidences. And if you look at the list of Janapadas or kingdoms who participated in the Mahabharata as described in Mahabharata, about 70 kingdoms. And in that 70, I can read few of them. It's some of the names is Chola, Dravida, Kerala, um, Banga is Bengal. Then I think Lanka and Simhala, and there are 70 such names of Janapadas. And this was part of the greater Mahabharata. Not necessarily was ruled by the Pandavas, or I mean, or the Mahabharata clans, but it was an India which had these kingdoms. It's very clearly stated. And more we go down, you'll see there's more coming in the Puranas. But Mahabharata very clearly gives idea of 50 rivers and 70 Janapadas or kingdoms that were in existence at that time. So if we move into the Puranas now, apart from Bhagavad Puran, now we get into later day Puranas. So first one is Vishnu Puran, which is supposed to be one of the oldest after the Bhagavad Puran, which is again people say it's probably um, between first century BC to 10th century CE. So there again, I don't want to get into that debate, but it is, we can take it for granted. It is very old, and it says that Uttaram Yatsamudrasya Himadraschaiva Dakshinam Varsham Tada Bharatam Nama Bharati Yatra Shanti. So it says the country, Varsha, Bharatvarsha, that lies north of the ocean and south of the snowy mountains called Bharatam. That country is called Bharatam. There dwell the descendants of Bharata. Now it clarifies now that the people who live there between the ocean and the mountain, the Himalayas, are the clans of Bharata, and the country is called Bharat, Bharatam, the Barsha. That means Bharat Varsha. Barsha means land. And then another shloka says that Rishabha was born to Marudevi, Bharata was born to Rishabha. Bharatvarsha arose from Bharata, and Shumati arose from Bharata. So this Bharata again in Vishnu Puran, it says very clearly. Then another shloka in Vishnu Puran says, this country has been known as Bharatvarsha since the times of the father entrusted the kingdom to the son of Bharata, and he himself went to forest for ascetic practices. So at the end of his time, he went to uh, uh, went back to Banprastha. Then if you look at the Vishnu Purana, it very elaborative description of the land, and it says that it has the landmass that is present between the Himalayas and the ocean is known as Bharat. It has an expansion of 9,000 yojanas. It is populated by the descendants of Bharat. It has 7 native mountains. So now here Vishnu Puran describes the mountains: Mahendra, Malay, Sahyadra, Shuktiman, Riksha, Vindhya, and Pariyatra. So at least we know some of them. We still know that by these names, and then 9 divisions named. So in Purana it says there are multiple deepas. That means continents. It describes. Then within the deepa or the continent that Purana says about India is Jambu Deepa, and within that Jambu Deepa, now it says 9 divisions: Indradeep, Kesaru, Tamrapan, probably Tamralipto, that Tamluk in south of Bengal, Gamastiman, Nagadweep, Soma, Gandharva, Barun, Yahadeep, and so forth. And is surrounded by the sea and has an expansion of 1,000 yojanas. In the eastern part of Bharat, it says, Vishnu Puran says, live Kirat, whereas in the west part live Yavanas. In the mid part of Bharat live population of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, who passed their lives engaged in works ascribed to their respective class and profession. So this is Vishnu Puran is so detailed about the landmass that it is very hard to think that how did they know? Did they had a plane they were riding? They had a drone or what? How did they know? That means it has been the knowledge of this landmass has been collected over many long time period, and that's how this description can be given. Then you come to Padma Puran, which is supposed to be not as old as Vishnu Puran, but still it is old. It talks about, say, 7 mountains, 11 rivers, and among the 11 rivers, it says some prominent rivers supplying potable water to the inhabitants of Bharatvarsha are Ganga, Sindhu, Saraswati, Godavari, Narmada, Shatadru, Yamuna, Vipasha, Mahanadi, Vidisham, Varuna, etc. Now again, we can see there are several rivers are from south and from west and east and north. Then there are 38 Janapadas mentioned in Padma Puran. They uh, are Kuru in Bharatvarsh, Kuru, Panchal, Salva, Maitra, and so forth. And then towards the end, it has Kashmir, it has Gandhar, it has Dravid, Kerala, Karnataka, Chol, and all these countries are mentioned in Padma Puran. Again, this was long before the invasions happened, and colonial invasions also happened. So we know that we have recorded, our ancestors have recorded the description of this land very clearly. So those are the references from Rig Veda to the Puranas to Mahabharata to Ramayana, and the fact that we have forgotten all of this is partly because of the colonists writing our history, and now the Marxists, they are still prominent in academics. They also don't want you to know our glorious ancient history, and they will always say that India was never one. And the gangs of Tukre Tukre will come and again hit this notion of a one united Bharat.
One aspect which has always struck me, and it is, I mean, very well known, but people don't always perceive it in that manner, is the spread of religious centers like the Shakti Peeths or the I mean
Char
the other
Dhams,
temples.
the Shankaracharya, Char Dhams and other places. Yes. So just before I get into Shakti Peeths and other, so we have to be clear that recently during G20 it was displayed that India is mother of democracy. But if you study also the writings of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, he also mentions that the oldest form of democracy can be found in India. But democratic formation is one. There are many types of governance mentioned. India has experimented with, of course, also with this idea of democracy. And today, the way we look at a nation state was not same when the times of the Vedas, of the Puranas, and Ramayana and Mahabharata. It did not have a one ruler ruling the whole nation, and boundaries are really strictly defined. Gujarat or Karnataka, these are very strict boundaries ruled from Delhi by one powerful king or government. It was actually the other way. The the kingdoms, the Janapadas, they were free to exercise their duty. They used to fight with each other, and that was the case. So these Janapadas were independent, and of course they had allegiance to certain kings like Samrat Vikramaditya. He actually had a lot of power, but he gave freedom to all the Janapadas to be their own. Like today's India, Delhi may decide certain things, that borders and security and so forth, economy, but the states do have a lot of freedom to decide on a lot of things. But in the olden days, in my opinion, the freedom was much more, and most of these kingdoms, the Janapadas, were independent. Though they had alliances, they had fights, and so forth. Now the Shakti Pietas. Um, some of the scriptures say there were 108 Shakti Pietas. What is Shakti or Shakti Peeth? So the legend says in Shiva Puran that Sati, Parvati was not invited to an occasion and an event happening in her father's place, but she still went without being invited, and she was insulted by her father and family members. And when Shivji came to know, he was furious, and he said, he started doing a Tandab Nrityam, so the world will be destroyed. So then Vishnu, found a way to stop this. So he gave the Sudarshan and chopped the body of Shati into pieces, and it fell in different parts of the Jamudi, which is the greater Bharat, and that's the legend. But having said that, the fact that in 108 places now, most people agree it was 51 locations where these Shakti peats where body parts of Shati was supposed to be have dropped. Um, so basically, Shakti energy has been established in these locations, and there are 51 of them. And it if you look at the map where they are located, in starting from Kashmir, the Sarada Peeth, the Sarada Math, that is now still in POK. Hopefully, there's a corridor is being made, but hopefully it will be part of back to modern India, Bharat again. Hinglaj in Pakistan, it is still there. Fortunately, it is still existing. In Sri Lanka, there are two such Shakti Peeths. In Tibet, there is one. In Nepal, there is one. And then rest of Bharat. Almost all states do have one, except a few states have one Shakti Peeth. And wherever these Shakti Peeths, this is a dual of Shakti and Vairavi, meaning Shiva and Durga are present in different names, different forms, in different parts. And it so happened, um, where we come from, Chandrachur and West Bengal has 13 or 14 Shakti Peeths, and Bangladesh has six, and then Tripura, Assam, Jharkhand, they all are Shakti Peeths. If you look at the map, nobody knows when this pilgrimage is started. Nobody can ascertain, but how they are all connected. Like the fact that you described there are 51 Shakti Peeths. Who discovered them? Who actually said that there are 51? This is so amazing intelligence, intuition our rishis had, our ancestors had, that we must take pride and say, oh my God, naman to those rishis that you established the unity and diversity of this land called Bharatvarsh.
And the same can be said of the Jyotirlingas also, the 12 Jyotirlingas.
Yes,
They are
there are
also spread across the country.
exactly 12 Jyotirlingas, and then the Char Dhams that was created by Adi Shankaracharya ji. So these are all evidence that that spiritually, culturally, and civilizationally we are one. Though after the invasions, lot had been changed, lot have been lost. Um, Yet the landmass we still have, that is called Republic of India today, or Bharat, that is India. um, it still has that unity, although the forces from within and without are still trying hard not to have this unity.